On ESPN the other day, like they were supposed to be like live, like some F1 racing event.
Hmm.
And since since obviously that couldn't happen, I think they got all of the drivers to get the simulator and play it
Yeah,
virtually. Yeah.
yeah, I heard about that. I'm
And
just
they were so
like,
bad. They were so bad. The driving skill did not translate to like video
yeah.
game skill. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Without a Roadmap podcast. This is the show for product people who don't know all the answers. We plan to tell the stories of product folks who get the job done but are still figuring it out. My name is Yonas.
My name is Cameron. Yonas and I are both PMs at Parlor, which is a startup located in downtown Boston. Today, we're joined with Marc, who's a PM at Indiegogo. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, Marc?
Cool. What's up, everybody? My name is Marc. I'm a product manager at Indiegogo. For those of you unaware, it is a crowdfunding company based in San Francisco, California. So right now I am there just kind of doing everything that we can to help keep the platform improving and boosting the value and appeal of crowdfunding to the greater masses.
So for those who don't know Oslo, Marc went to Belmont Hill School, which is my alma mater. It was, we both went in the same high school. He was a little bit older than I was, but I always looked up to him. Good guy. Was really excited when I ran into him at Afrotech a couple years back, where he was actually looking for roles at PM roles at that time. So really excited to hear he landed the job at Indiegogo. Congrats to you, Marc. You're doing great things. So yeah, I would love to hear kind of your journey into tech. How you kind of maybe what you studied in school and how you got to where you are now, and a little bit about that process, because I think a lot of people who listen to the show are in a similar place, looking for their first role as a PM, and would love to hear what you had, kind of what you went through.
Yeah. I'd say it's a really long, kind of winded journey for me. So I'll try to do my best to keep it brief. But growing up, I've always been interested in computers. So when college came around, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to at least try to get my feet wet in being more involved, possibly as an engineer. Took some computer science courses. Basic stuff was going great. Once it got more advanced, a little more difficult. Tried that again in grad school, similar story. So my first job out of college was working in HR at Boston University. And then as I started working with some engineers there, realized and started hearing more about the tech environment as well. I felt like, the tech boom was a thing at that time. And a lot of people I knew were moving into tech. So as I started looking into it a bit more, it was really appealing. The classic tech perks of having like beer fridges, lawn games, more chill and relaxed environments. And for me, 2, 3 years out of college, I was like, oh yeah, I could be down for that. That sounds fun.
Right, right.
So I joined Athena Health, which is a major healthcare online software platform for medical practices, based in Watertown, Massachusetts. Worked there for about 3.5 years. And in my role there, I was a business rep for the patient statements and sort of credit card processing teams there. So, our goal was to, help doctors get their money from their patients after providing services. And part of my role was to work really closely with the product managers assigned to our team, as well as the engineers. So that was when I really learned what product management was. I'd say I didn't even know that that was a role before I joined Athena Health. And as I spent my time working with the engineers and the PMs there, realized that particularly on the PM side, there's a lot of cool things that I felt like I wanted to eventually kind of take on as a role. The fact that they work with engineers on a very close basis, the fact that they're building these strategic plans, helping push out new features, helping sort of revise current features, improve upon them, fixing bugs, kind of just feeling like you kind of do a bit of everything, and having a lot of responsibility. And I think for me, the most important thing about it was knowing that everything I did mattered. So as a PM, your job matters. You have a lot of impact on your organization. Even if whether you're a regular sort of base level PM, a senior PM, regardless of where you are, the fact that you're a PM means that your work has a lot of impact. And for me, being sure that I have an impact in what I do is important because, you know, I don't want to feel like I'm wasting time wherever I am, and I want to make sure that there's value in what I do. And on top of all that, you know, you're close to code, you're working with engineers, whether or not you know how to code, you're still sort of in that environment. And I felt like that was something that could, you know, scratch my itch of wanting to be an engineer, wanting to be close to code, wanting to code, but not feeling like I'm equipped to do it myself.
So that's actually funny that you say that, because a lot of like what I like about being in product is that it does kind of have that it's very close to engineering without having to have some sort of technical background. And you know, it does feel a little legitimizing just like on its own. You know, sometimes I'll like, you know, open up inspect element on the side just to
a little shortcut.
Just,
I'll see what this is going
you know,
on.
if I'm in a coffee shop, I might leave that window open. So yeah, there's something there's something to say about you know, just kind of the you know, perception of product managers in your technical you know, capability, or how that's perceived. And you know, once you get into the role, you realize that it isn't really an actual technical background that's required, but just kind of the general understanding. But still, yeah, it's definitely a big driver for my interest.
Yeah, I'm the same exact way, for sure.
Oh, sorry, Kim, go ahead.
No, I was just saying I'm the same exact way. Like I always, just like you, like what's your story and how you got into product management, like overall, it's kind of similar to like how I came up. I went to high school, college, and like landed in tech, luckily, right out of college. But I always wanted to be around technology and be involved with like building technology. But I also took a Python course at BU. And at the end, I was like, "Yeah, this is not for me." And that was the intro course. So I was like, "Yeah, this is not it, Chief." So,
yeah.
Are y'all the same person? You both went to BU. That's great.
Hey, man. I advise anyone who has even the slightest interest in tech and coding to at least give intro courses a chance.
Yeah, for sure.
See if it works. For me, it was really helpful to at least understand the things that I do grasp really well and the things that like I just don't understand at all. But it's cool to just get used to seeing what code even looks like, because even now, like as a PM, like being super technically capable isn't a part of my role, but the fact that I'm familiar with at least seeing what things look like having a familiarity with reading code helps me, because although it's not an expectation of exactly what I'm going to be doing in my day to day, it helps at least build some familiarity with the engineers that I'm working with. I can actually like look at certain things and ask questions about it, and at least, you know, it helps build more of a rapport between you and your team and the people that you're working with. So even if it's not something that you're doing on your day to day, it's kind of a cool, you know, skill to have in your back pocket.
Yeah, for sure. I think all three of us kind of stumbled upon product management. Like it's not really talked about in like higher education or high school even. So like, how do you think kind of like schools, other programs can kind of incorporate the different aspects of like a technology like startup? So like product management, customer success, customer support. Because I feel like those three roles in particular aren't really spoken about a lot during like your education days.
Right. You know, it's super weird to me. Like I think after I learned what product management was, and like thinking about like the courses that I took and the things that I knew about, and it's just like, why don't we have courses on this? Like, why don't, you know, a major school like Boston University, one of the biggest schools in Boston, Massachusetts, like why don't we have product management specific courses? You know, we have entrepreneurship tracks, we have engineering tracks, we have all of these different tracks in business school, or even on the computer science end, but there's nothing particularly to product management. And I feel like that's a huge miss on the part of higher education institutions, that this is such a big field for people. Product management roles are so hard to get into. It's the type of thing that people are really interested in because it helps you build management skills. It helps you build skills in regards to just business in general. There is an engineering sort of aspect to it. And I feel like the current approach is that like, you know, you take a management course, you take a computer science course, you take all the different little courses, and then you kind of have to build and compile the skills together yourself to kind of get into product management, but you're not learning what it actually is to be one in schooling. You figure it out once you're on the job. And
Yeah.
with everything else in school being based on you learning how to do the job before you're there, it seems odd that with this being such a big position in the world, like every major tech company needs product
Yeah.
managers.
Yep.
It's like one of the biggest recruiting positions in a lot of the tech companies that are out here in San Francisco. And it's just like, why isn't this a track in college for people? And I think schools out here do it more. I think they do it better. Like I know UC Berkeley, I'll hear a lot about, students from UC Berkeley going into product management internships. So I feel like maybe the pipeline makes more sense because it's the Bay Area and there are a lot of PMs out here. But I feel like, Boston should have something like that. There are a lot of tech startups in Boston.
Yeah.
So schools should be sort of adapting to that and providing more resourcing around becoming product managers. It's like you have to be in the know, like you have to know that product management is something you're interested in, and you got to seek out those internships while you're in college to build that experience. But for people like us and, me in particular, like I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't know what to look for. Again, I didn't find out about it really until I had already graduated from college and had a few years under my belt in the workforce. So I really think part of it is on, institutions to like start having product management courses, have a product management track. Like you have a business school, have a product management track in the business school the same way you have an entrepreneurship track.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's kind of how I feel about it. I do feel like schools are doing more in that sense. But there's always more that can be done.
Yeah. So kind of back to your journey into tech. We left off before I cut you off at you were working at Athena Health under like a business role, but closely with engineering and product. And that's where you got interested. So kind of could you continue where you left off there and like how you took that interest and turned it into this, dope new role you have at Indiegogo?
Yeah.
Yeah, and
So
and,
it's
and how'd you actually go across country to San Francisco?
cool. Yeah. Definitely. So the opportunity kind of fell in my lap in regards to what I had at Athena, where the PM, so I was primarily focused on what we refer to as the patient statements team, and then kind of got shifted over into this role on our credit card processing service. And the PM who was assigned to that area essentially got reassigned to a different area of the team. So I was working very closely with him for a number of months, kind of he had kind of taken me under his wing because he was the only person in the business that really knew how that function worked. And we were just like, we have a single point of failure. This is a massive part of our platform. We need to fix this. So I was kind of brought in to be the number two to kind of at least have someone else on the team have knowledge of how all this works. When he got reassigned, my boss was pretty much just like, we've kind of been grooming you for this anyways, but you're the one who's best equipped to take on this role and responsibility. Would you be open to doing so? And I was kind of just like, yeah, I've been doing this a lot over the last few months. I've gotten used to it. I like working with the team. I like what our previous product manager was doing. I, would definitely be open to taking this on. So I spent about the last year or so of my time at Athena Health kind of serving as a product manager for our credit card processing service. Didn't have the title, so it wasn't like an official position change or anything like that. But those responsibilities fell within my role. And as I was doing that, I realized that like, okay, this is something that I really do enjoy doing. I feel like I have a lot of impact. Again, I feel like what I'm doing provides a lot of value and is a kind of like a key position, like thinking about job security and stuff like that. Being in tech, things are fluid. People are always in and out. Things are always changing. So it also gave me a sense of job security because I felt like what I was doing was really important, and it provided, it made me as an employee more valuable to the company. So I felt kind of safe in the sense as well. And then while I was working at Athena, my wife was looking for new opportunities. and got recruited for a job out here. So we decided we wanted to move, made it as fun as possible. So we did a road trip out of it. So we actually, shipped a bunch of our stuff out here and spent a week driving cross country. For me, I had never really driven that. I'd say the farthest I've ever driven was like 3 hours to Vermont. Growing up, my wife was used to road trips, so it was very much a culture shock for me. But it was cool. It was cool. If anyone has the time and the strength to go on a cross country road trip,
the mental stamina,
right? The mental stamina to be in a car for 15 hours a day as you're driving across some different, like there are stretches of the country that I don't need to be, that I don't
never go again.
And those are the places where like we just made sure we drove through as quickly as possible. So there's just places that I don't need to go.
I'm with you there.
And that's the stretch of the road trip that was tough. It was just like we just got to make it. We gotta stay in this car and we just got to push through till we get somewhere more welcoming and more fun. But moved out here, still stayed with Athena, worked full-time remotely for about 8 months. Part of that, I realized that I wanted to be back in an office environment again. Being at a brand new place where I didn't have a huge network or anything like that here, I wanted to be in a position where it would be easier for me to meet more people. Being an introvert, I'm not the type of person to go out of my way to meet more people. So having an office environment where people are there and I'm naturally building those sorts of relationships was really helpful for me. And at the same time, I wanted to move into a full-time product manager role. So kind of looking at the Athena landscape, there weren't really any product manager positions open from at least what I could see. And I did want to become more acclimated to like a physical office environment out here. So I started my job search, and it was definitely a struggle to start. Being someone that didn't have a product manager title, it made me realize how important it was to have one out here, because that's what people are really looking for. Even though I felt like I had the right experience, and the reason why I even kind of got to that outlook was that I started reaching out to, again, trying to get out of my introvert bubble, kind of going on LinkedIn and finding PMs for companies out here that I'm interested in, and kind of just reaching out to them and, hearing more about what their day-to-day is, what their roles and responsibilities are, kind of taking notes and comparing that to what I'm doing on a daily basis and checking off the boxes and be like, yep, meet with engineers. Okay, I do that. Doing product road getting, yep, sprint planning, yep, do all that. So checking off all the boxes and getting more confidence in myself that, okay, like this is something that I'm cut out for. It's just finding how do I get my foot in the door.
Yep. So this was probably around the time that we met at Afrotech, like you were in the job search, and I was doing the same thing. This was, pre-Parlor, in between, I was looking for jobs, but wasn't necessarily there for that, but just trying to like talk to as many people as possible, meet people. Didn't hurt that they were Black and they were in tech, and found a community of people that were in product there, and just met so many dope people, made connections, people who eventually got me interviews, places that they worked. And it was also, just amazing to and very validating to kind of see people who looked like you. And, I came back with like this, like, vigor after that, and like really took the struggles from my the prior job search and kind of put this new energy into it. And thankfully landed something. It seems like you did too.
Yeah. I can't say that my position is a direct result of Afrotech, but the Afrotech experience definitely influenced the steps that I took going forward. Being able to talk with a lot of different companies there, hearing what they look for in PMs, hearing what their advice is. A lot of what I talked to different companies about was, what is your advice for someone who is looking for a PM role but doesn't currently have the title? And a lot of them gave me a lot of great advice about, going on LinkedIn and reaching out to PMs, reaching out to recruiters that are hiring for PM positions and talking to them and hearing what they look for, even if it's not the company that I'm interested in, but at least getting a feedback from a recruiting perspective on what it is they look for when they're sifting through resumes and stuff like that. Afrotech got me more accustomed to being in large networking events in general. So that's something that I wasn't used to doing. And the comfort of being in that environment with, with it being a predominantly Black event, and kind of just getting my familiarity with that and becoming more accustomed to kind of, going out of my bubble of just, saying hi to people and striking conversation and learning about what they do and stuff like that. It got me more comfortable with doing that with events out here in the Bay Area. So after that, I was able to feel more comfortable going to other smaller sort of Bay Area like Black tech events. And through that, I was able to get connected with an individual who was essentially a PM coach and consultant. So he spent a lot of years as a PM at various different companies. And he's now sort of in a consultant role for different companies and also coaching other people on joining the PM landscape on the side. And I was able to be introduced to him through a friend at one of these Black networking events. It was funny because he's a white male, but one thing that I really appreciated about him was that he was there because he wanted to be more helpful to the Black community.
Interesting.
And that was something that I realized going to these events as well, is that you do see a lot of instances of, white individuals who are there that are trying to help diversify the tech environment. So they're there literally to either recruit or help coach people and provide them with some perspectives that they may not be aware of and just help guide them on how they can get their foot in the door in different fields.
I think that's like, there's an interesting, sorry to cut you off, but I think there's an interesting talking point there. And, it's just like obviously like community is super important. And like you said, there's a lot of like well-intentioned individuals and companies that are putting efforts forward to try and like hire more diverse candidates. But like, we still know that the percentage of people of color, specifically Black folks in the tech industry is like far below the, percentage of Black folk in the workforce. And so it just makes me like, it makes me think like, there's these well-intentioned companies, or so they seem, trying to hire these diverse candidates. Why aren't they landing these jobs? Why are like, where do you think there is that disconnect? I feel like being in San Francisco, you probably see it at a greater scale than we do. Especially just like you probably actually have a community of Black folks in tech that you hang around. I don't know, like my community, that's Cam, like, like in Boston. So
before we go, I think for those who aren't watching the video, if you haven't already caught on, the three of us, Yonas, Mark, and I, are all Black people in tech.
Oh, yeah, that's right. The people listening, the people listening on the podcast apps. Yeah, that is that's a good point.
Yeah. So myself, Yonas, and Mark, we're all Black PMs in tech, which is, from I think all our experiences, is pretty rare to have three of us sit down together and talk as Black PMs in tech. So I think for the remainder of this, we probably should just focus and kind of discuss like our experiences in the tech world, being a Black male. Because I feel like, especially for my experience, there's not many people that look like me out in the tech field.
Yeah. And that's the same out here. The percentages aren't any different. So one thing that's funny to see is, at Afrotech, you'll see, the Black affinity groups for all of the major tech companies. So, the Microsofts, the Googles, the Facebooks, the LinkedIn, they'll send their, the Black affinity groups will be there to help recruit and help build those diversity numbers. Not from a disingenuous perspective, but, if you're going to recruit Black individuals, you should bring Black people who those individuals can
relate to and stuff like that.
Right. And it's funny because you'll see those groups and you'll be like, man, Microsoft has a ton of Black people. Google might be the Blackest company I've ever seen. But then when you look at the metrics, the metrics aren't that different than the general tech field. It's just that those companies are so massive that they have the volume. But their percentages aren't that different. So like across the board, Black representation in tech is extremely low. I think the highest numbers are around 10 to 12%. which, yeah, when you look at the percentage of Black people in the country, at least, or that live in these areas, you'd be like, okay, that's extremely disproportionate to what it should be. And I think for me, like it's cool to see those numbers, but at the same time, keep it in my head that like the percentages aren't that different. So like there aren't, Indiegogo is a company of about like 55, 60 people. There aren't a ton of Black people there, but at the same time, there aren't a ton of people there, period. So like looking at the percentage in my, if I look at the number of Black faces in the room, I'm gonna be like, oh, okay, super small. But when I'm scaling it in comparison to these larger companies, the percentages are the exact same. So although I might feel like from a comfort perspective, maybe I feel represented more at a larger company because there's a lot more Black people there, but like the numbers at the end of the day are the same. And I think that's something to keep in mind because you may feel like a company is Blacker because of the fact that they have more people, but that's just by nature of the fact that they're a much larger company. And I think what companies need to do, Jonas, to tie back to your original question of what can companies do to help bridge that gap, is send people to these events. And yeah, it's helpful if they're Black, but it's also helpful if there are white people there. Like, are you about it that much that you're going to show up yourself, and not just have your Black representation go on your behalf? But will you actually take the step to show face and be there as well? And are you willing to work with other organizations that are trying to bridge the gap? There is a group out here, Black Women in Tech. There are groups like Girls Who Code. Like, are you going to work with those organizations that have sort of the pulse of the Black community and people that are trying to get into tech and trying to find ways to best utilize their skills? Like, are you going to partner with those groups to help build those numbers and to help build that representation in your company? Because it's more than just sending your Black affinity group to a Black tech event. You need to take, there are things behind the scenes that you need to do as well. You need to partner with these teams. You need to have, when you're looking at your recruiting pipeline, you do need to have a funnel for are you going out of your way to find Black people?
Right.
Again, to all of our experiences, not everybody knows that this is a thing. So not
I didn't know
know
Afrotech was a thing.
Right.
Even product management, which I think you were actually referring to, but yeah.
Both. I mean, in both cases, I didn't know they were a thing. I didn't know about Afrotech until I moved out here and people were talking about it, and I was like, oh, what's that? So like, you need to put the extra foot forward because there is a community that doesn't know about these positions. They don't know how to go about it. For a lot of these larger companies, you need to have an inside source to get you in. A lot of people are looking for personal references at these companies because that's the only way your resume is going to get looked at if you don't already have the title. A lot of us don't have these personal references that work
exactly
because these companies only have 10%. Like 10% of these companies are people that we really know and relate to. So you need to take that extra step forward to work with these organizations to open up that pipeline to our community, because we don't really have any significant way in otherwise.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of these well-intentioned companies, while they are well-intentioned, all the work or the majority of the work comes after you've hired that diverse candidate and making sure that they feel comfortable and that you're going to be able to retain them as an employee. So, like it's great if you have, these ideas, but if the makeup isn't in a place where that person's going to feel like they have, a sense of community, then, if it's not going to align with, the expectations that were set originally. So, I think a lot of it is actually that, there's, like less interested, there's less interest within the Black community in joining tech for that reason. They don't see as many faces that look like theirs in those spaces. And because of that, they're not as likely to gravitate. They don't feel as comfortable. So, yeah, I think half the battle is being, well intentioned. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Now I've seen there's like management consulting, like firms specifically focused on like diversity and inclusion for companies, and
Yeah, for sure.
that's interesting.
Yeah. I've been fortunate enough to have two managers who have made me feel super comfortable, even though being the only Black person in either the product org or just the whole company in general. So I've been super fortunate in being comfortable, and like my old boss, Jalon, she was very like down to earth and very like relatable to me in like my experiences, probably because she's from the South. So she probably had a lot of interaction living in Atlanta and in Florida with other Black people. But I feel like a lot of people of color that are in these tech positions that don't have people that can relate to them or understand like what they can be going through working as the only Black person, the only person of only minority in the company, can be very like, it can be like a culture shock, especially if you're used to being around people that look like you every day, and you go to work every day and you're the only person in the room that looks like you. It's like, oh my God,
Right.
Right. Imagine if nobody was there to comment on your waves when you came in the morning.
I'm saying,
like
you need to be gassed up sometimes. You need to be gassed up sometimes.
Yeah, man. It's just like, why am I putting in all of this effort to make sure my waves are on point when no one's there to even say so?
For nothing. For nothing. I used to get all dressed up, put my ones on, and not get one word. So like, but in all seriousness, the importance of this is because of the importance of community. And like, we don't even have to, explain that, because I think just about anybody can understand that value, whether it's, like a affinity group based on like your race, or just being around people who like enjoy playing Rocket League. There's a sense of community that really has a positive impact, not only on like the work that's done, but also just kind of down the long term employee retention. And those are things that are really important to companies' bottom lines, or they should be. So that's why we're seeing a big push in this direction. Not maybe a little dark, but I don't think it's out of altruism or some deep-seated feeling that there's inequality and how employment practices. But I think it is because there is a genuine positive impact that there's data to empirically sound like data that shows this, that having more diverse candidates does have a positive impact on the business. So
for sure,
if companies want to want that, or want to benefit from that, it's really important that they're kind of completing the whole cycle and building a funnel for people, so that when they do come, they feel like they have a sense of community.
I mean, we've all witnessed the marketing blunders over the last 5 years.
Oh God. Yeah.
It's just like, I wonder if they had anyone Black in the room when they were pitching this idea.
Yeah, but in terms of this culture fit, like, what do you guys both like look for, like when you ultimately look for the next job, or like when you're just looking to join something? Like, what are some of the ways you think about how you would fit being a Black person in that role or in that company?
That's a really interesting question, and I feel like I would approach that differently now that I'm one in the space, and two, kind of just, I don't know, have more years and experience over my belt.
We can be picky now. We can be
right.
Yeah. We can be a little bougie.
Yeah.
I think for me, like, I went to Belmont Hill, private institution in Boston, predominantly white. Went to Boston University, predominantly white. So like, I've been used, like, since I was like 12 years old, to being in spaces where I'm the only one in the class that looks like me.
Same.
And when it came to joining the workforce and being an adult, I didn't look too much about diversity, because it was just like, for most of my life, I'm used to being the only one in the room. I'm not going to let that stop me now.
Right. Same way.
So I found jobs that looked interesting to me based on the nature of what it would be that I'm doing, and whether or not I would feel like I'd have fun, not necessarily based on what the diversity of the company looks like. I feel like that's going to be something that I do want to play a part in when it comes to whenever my next steps are, whenever they happen. I do think I want to do what I can to kind of, give back to the community and help it be more, um, to make sure that our company, our community has a greater influence on the tech community, and kind of thinking about ways that I can do that. Companies that do have these affinity groups, I do think are helpful because you have the opportunity with a group of individuals that you like and relate to go out there and speak with people. So like if you want to visit a high school to talk about what it's like to be Black in tech, having a group of people with you to do that is helpful.
Right.
Um,
And you have
whether you're going
power in that group, with
right.
more people, you actually can, make change within the organization just based off the fact that like they can't ignore you if you band together,
Right. Right.
Yeah. Mhm.
So yeah, I can't say that I've given that a ton of thought lately. But I do think when it comes time for me to think about what I want to do next or where I want to go next, I do think that's something that's going to be a larger part of what I look for in the culture fit. Because yeah, like looking for a product manager job, like I didn't really have those options.
Yeah.
As someone coming from the outside, even though I've had the role and the responsibilities, I didn't have the title, I didn't have the network. Um, so I didn't really have the opportunity to pick and choose exactly what it is that I wanted to do.
Mhm.
And I was grateful to land in a place where I am happy and I am enjoying everything that I'm doing. But at the same time, it would have been cool to have more of that and have the Black community be a greater part of the culture that I'm looking for. And at the end of the day, I can still do that, whenever I feel like the time is right, whenever I'm ready to make that next step. And that's a thing that I would want people to kind of take into account as well. Like if you're trying to get into the PM field, your first chance to do so may not be exactly what you want. It may not be that gold-plated expectation that you set for yourself, but
Mhm.
know that once you get in, you're in, and it just makes where you want to go in the future even easier. So uh, don't prevent yourself from taking on an opportunity because it's not the exact thing that you were looking for when you started your
Yep.
search.
Yep.
Because at the end of the day, you just need to get in and then build your experience, build your rapport, and then use that as your way to catapult yourself to where you want to get eventually down the line. But don't be so short-sighted that you're ignoring the opportunities that you do have because it's not exactly what you thought you wanted at the start of your journey.
Yeah. You
Mhm.
can't skip steps in the journey.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Some of us are lucky enough to get exactly where we want to get to at the beginning,
Yeah.
but that's not the realistic
Mhm.
case for everybody. So,
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Definitely a nice to have, not a need to have. Hard to say that, but that's the truth. Like, because in order to like build this community, like people like us, we're kind of like planting seeds. Like with just the three of us, like the opportunities down the line that we can create as a group. Is much larger than it would have been had we not joined the tech community just because we're afraid of being ostracized. And I think the three of us are kind of unique in that we can naturally fit into just about any culture. Like just, the reason why people, like any type of person has, enjoys listening to our show, for whoever does, if they do. But but it's
Right.
like it's because we're relatable, and I think that has to do with our upbringing and the schools
Yeah.
we went to. And so I think it's easier for us. Culture fit is not going to be an issue. I think just about anybody would like to have any of us from a culture fit perspective. And I think that's important to take advantage of that and be the best advocates that we can be within our roles down the line and right now, and trying to support other Black candidates throughout the process, whether it's at your company or just in general. I remember after I got my job, I just like was excited to share the information that I had kind of accumulated throughout my search, and it was really felt great to talk about it and share that info, and the helps in the thought in the hopes that people like me who struggled might have an easier job kind of getting in. So
Yeah.
that's kind of how I see where we can be valuable, the importance of culture fit. Yeah. all that good stuff.
All right. I think that about wraps it up for us today. For everyone listening, like, subscribe, follow, all the things. Marc, we appreciate you coming on the show. You can talk for hours.
Yeah, we could,
thanks.
we might have to make a part 2, because I feel like this conversation has not finished, has not come to an end, but people's short attention spans kind of
too short,
pushing our hand here. So we
the analytics show. The analytics show.
Yes. We're product managers. We only make decisions based off numbers.
Right.
That's a lie.
But no, thanks to y'all for starting this and doing this and getting your voices out there and being a resource and an outlet for other Black individuals that aren't only PMs but are in the tech field in general. Thanks for having me on. Would definitely love a part 2, part 3. However many times it takes. I'm down to join. This was a lot of fun. So thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Appreciate you, man.
Thanks, Marc. You the man.